Hello everyone, this is Stephanie. Welcome to another video. So today we're going to work on the Scattered Leaves bracelet. And this bracelet uses some of the beads from my most recent collaboration with Eureka Crystal Beads called the Autumn in New York collection. And this is so dear to my heart because I went back to my childhood for inspiration, living in New York City and going to Central Park. So this is the bracelet. We did 5 bezels for this bracelet. It's a more advanced tutorial, so if you're a beginner, maybe you just want to do 1 bezel and then do the bracelet, or just make it smaller, or maybe just watch it if you're a beginner and see what you think. But you do have to make some decisions as you're going along, and I try to get you through each one, all these connections, as easy as possible. All right, so I'm going to clear this off, get a materials list going, and we'll get started. If you enjoy this video, please press the like button and subscribe and the notifications so that you'll get notified every time I upload a video. All right, let's get started. Let's get our materials list going. So I'm using the Toho Treasures from the collection, and I added my own 2 delicas in colors, and I kind of coordinated the colors with my stones. But you don't have to do that. You can use all of these, but I liked adding these on. So it's up to you. And then you'll need 5 of your stones from the collection, or if you're just ordering, and I'll put everything in the description box below the video. I have 4 10 by 14 millimeter pear fancy stones in 2 different colors, and then I have the 18 millimeter pear fancy stone in this one of those. Then I've got an 11-0 Toho. I've got a Paisley Duo 3 millimeter pearls. You'll need an 11-0 Miyuki, just round seed bead, 15-0, and this is a Miyuki. I've got this clasp, so this is a toggle clasp that's in the collection. Size 10 beading needle, 10 and 12 beading needle. You need some 8-pound Fireline black satin. That's what I'm using. You could use 6-pound. Everything here is in the collection except for these 2 coordinating beads. So, if you have the collection, you can do this, and you can just do it with the collection beads, but I kind of like adding the little delica, the color delicas in there. All right, so I'm going to clear this off, and we're going to get started. Okay, the first stone we're going to bezel is the 10 by 14 millimeter, and this is the Elite Eureka Crystal Stone. So I'm going to thread my needle with about 30 inches of thread, put on a stop bead around the middle. I'm going to pick up and drop down to my stop bead 32 of my cylinder beads. Now, I have alternated here between the Toho Treasure that's in the collection and a Miyuki from my stash. And this one from my stash, I just want to show it to you, is from a previous collection. It says PF on it. I always mark them, but I'm not sure if that's Pumpkin Festival or Poppy Fields. I don't know. It's probably one or the other. So if you are a collector of the collections, you may have these. So I've put on 32 and I've alternated colors. I started with the Carnival Gold color, and I ended with the pumpkin-y color. Okay, I'm going to sew them into a circle by sewing up through that first gold bead after my stop bead, like that. And now I have a circle. Next up, I'm going to pick up my pumpkin colored bead. I'm exiting the gold one, skipping this one, sewing through the next one. So if you're just doing regular peyote in one color, you're just picking up a bead, skipping a bead, sewing through the next bead. If you're alternating colors, all you're going to do is every time you put on a bead, you're going to pick up the pumpkin color and sew through the gold color. Pumpkin through the gold, or whatever colors you're using. So this is what it looks like. You can do that all the way around, and then we'll step up. Okay, time to step up, so I'm picking up my last bead. I'm exiting the gold one, skipping the pumpkin color, adding a pumpkin, sewing through the next gold bead, and then the pumpkin color on the diagonal. Like that. This is what I have. Next, I'm going to add some 15-0s on. So I'm going to pick up a 15-0. I'm exiting the cylinder bead here. I'm just going to sew through the next one. Just going to keep doing that until I have maybe 6 beads on. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll put one more. Now that I have, I'm pulling in a little bit with my thumb just to help it curve a little bit. So now to make a decrease, I'm exiting this cylinder. I'm going to just sew through the next cylinder bead without putting a bead on. And I'm just going to just give it a little pull inward, and that kind of will give me a little decrease right there. So don't pull too tight because you don't want it all, make it too rigid. You want to, have it fluid. I'm getting a little tight here, so I'm going to loosen up a little bit. Okay, and then I'm just going to finish out my round with adding 15-0s on, and I'm going to step up. Okay, so get that done, and then we'll continue. To step up, so picking up my 15-0, exiting here, sew through this delga or cylinder, and then the 15-0 on the diagonal. And this is what it looks like. Okay, this is what it looks like so far. I've stepped up, and here's my spot where I skipped putting a 15-0 on, and I did my decrease. So we're going to pick up, I'll just keep going, pick up a 15-0. So exiting here, I'm going to pick up a 15-0. I'm going to sew through each sticking out 15-0, pulling it in a little bit as I go. You want nice tension, not too tight, but you don't want loose either. It's such an important thing with this type of beading is tension, and that just takes a lot of practice. There. There. Now I'm coming up to where I don't have my 15-0 there, exiting here. I'm just going to pick up a 15-0, and I'm just going to go directly through the next 15-0. So I'm not, I'm just going to sort of bring it in, see how that brings that in there when I pull it together. And then I'm just going to continue, just putting my 15-0s on until I get to the end, and then I'm going to step up. So you haven't done anything other than go through each sticking out 15-0. It just looks a little wonky at that part where where you did your decrease, but it'll pull together and look beautiful. So I'll go all the way around with you. Almost there. Okay, let's step up. So here I'm exiting this 15-0. I'm just going to sew through the next 15-0 and then the one on the diagonal. That's going to step me up. And I'm going to give it a nice little pull. And this is what it looks like. Okay, this is what it looks like so far. So now I'm going to leave this thread right now, and I'm going to turn it over to the other side. This is the back. And I'm going to thread my needle, take off my stop bead and thread my needle. So I'm exiting one of these interior beads, the gold bead. I'm just going to move my thread to the outside so I can add some beads on here. So just like that. And at this point, you're going to put this, you can put the stone in. Put it in right now. And just put it face down. And you see where, in here where we did our little decrease here, just make sure your point is pointed, is down like that. And it sort of comes in between these two delicas at the top as well. Just hold it with your thumb. If it moves, you can move it back before you have a little bit of time. So I'm just going to pick up 15-0s, and I'm going to sew through each sticking out cylinder bead. You do that. till we get up to that point. Just holding it with my thumb, and if it moves, don't worry about it. You'll just kind of move it back a little bit. Like that. So we're coming up to the top. Let's just pick up a 15-0. So through the next one. So you're just going around, putting a 15. You're going to add a 15-0 in between each sticking out cylinder bead. So you're not doing any decreasing on this side. You're just going to keep going all the way around, and you're going to do it until you have 2 rounds on. And just do the 1 round and step up, and then I want to work with the point with you on the next round, just in case we need to adjust it a little bit. So just go all the way around, step up, and then we'll continue. Okay, so here we are in the back. We're still in the back, and I've stepped up, put my first round of 15-0s on, stepped up, still a little loose. Let's get our second round on. So we'll see what we do at the point. We might just leave it, or we might decrease a little bit. So I'm just going to just put on my 15-0s and pulling in. Oops, got a little twisted there. Just pulling in. Holding it with my thumb. Give me a nice pull. That's sitting pretty nicely, so I think we might just be able to go around with all 15-0s. Keep going. Just want to turn it to the other side for a second just to make sure my point is in the right place. Yes, looking really good. So I'm gonna go back to the other side, to the back, and I'm going to just finish up my 15-0s here. I'll let you go ahead and do that. Pulling them in nice and snug, and I think that's gonna be fine. So then do that all the way around, step up, but don't cut off this thread. Okay, coming down to the end, I'm gonna put on my last 15-0. So exiting this 15-0, I'm gonna sew this one, and the one on the diagonal, like that, giving that a little pull inward. So let's check it out, see how it looks. Looks pretty beautiful. It's nice and feels good. What you can do here, so here I've turned onto the front. I know it's so shiny that it's hard to see what I'm doing. I gave it a little pull inward. And then what you can do here is just leave that back thread, exiting this 15-0. I'm going to sew through this 15-0 next, on the diagonal, and I'm going to work my way to the delicas or the cylinder beads. And if you feel your bezel is slightly loose, I'm trying to see if mine's loose. It actually feels really good, but if it feels a little loose to you, you can just move through the delicas. Here, I'll show you how. On the diagonal, so exiting here, or cylinder beads. I know I keep calling them delicas, but there are so many different, they're different now, so we'll call them cylinder beads. So here, you can just fill these cylinder beads up with a little bit of thread. You don't want too much because we're going to be using those beads to connect, but you can just, go around one more time if you feel like you need a little bit of, it needs to be more secure, but I think that looks so pretty. And it's so sparkly, isn't it? Here's the back. Keep that thread on. Here's the front. So what you can do is sew this front thread around a little bit and then clip that thread off, and then we'll go back to the other thread. Okay, so here's our first bezel done, and I think it came out really pretty. So we're still on the back. We have a little more on the back to do. So if you notice on the bracelet, I put an 11-0 around the edge just to lift it up off the skin. So if you want to do that, I'll go ahead and show you how to do that. Some people don't mind if the back of the stone is resting on the skin. They kind of just do a little like clear nail polish on there or something, but I kind of like to lift it up a little bit. So you'll be exiting a 15-0 just right here. So I'm going to move over to this next round of 15-0s, up one. So you want to be exiting out of a 15-0, the second one from the last one on the back. And then all you're going to do here is you can add a delica, you can add an 11-0. I did an 11-0, so I will continue with the 11-0s. Sorry, I had the cap in my mouth. All right, so just picking up an 11-0, exiting this 15-0. I'm going to sew through the next 15-0. And just make sure it's sitting nicely. Picking up an 11-0, sew through the next. I know it's hard to see because of the same color. Next 15-0, 11-0, exiting this 15-0, sew through the next 15-0, right there. And you're just going to do that all the way around, and then you'll sew this thread in. And that's just going to, keep it off your, off your skin. Coming down to the end, putting my last 11-0 on, so I'm exiting this 15-0. I know, it's so hard to see. And I'm going to sew through this next 15-0 right here. So it's going to pull everything in together. And then I'm just going to sew through the delicas. Just a little bit. And then reverse direction, kind of, pull these in a little bit. This is what it looks like. So from the front, you don't see it that much, just a little bit, but it's just enough to kind of hold it up so that the stone is not resting so heavily on your skin. All right, so there we have one done. So finish that up and come back and we'll continue. Okay, so we got one of the 10 by 14 millimeter golden topaz stones done. And now you're going to do the second one the exact same way, and then you're going to do the amethyst 10 by 14 millimeter pear-shaped stone exactly the same, except if you're alternating, you'll use a color, or some sort of contrasting color there, along with your Toho treasure right here. All right, so get your all four done, and then come back and we'll bezel this gorgeous bigger stone right here. It's time to do the pear stone now, the 18 millimeter. So thread your needle with about 3 feet of thread, put on a stop bead in the middle, and then I'm going to drop down to my stop bead, alternating again, 40 cylinder beads. So I started with the Toho treasure, and then I added the Miyuki delica, and I alternated until I had 40 beads on my thread. Now I'm going to sew it into a circle, just like we did before, by sewing through the first bead after my stop bead, just that treasure. And this is what I have. Now I'm just going to pick up the sort of pumpkin-y colored bead, and I'm going to sew through the gold bead. So I'm just picking up this delica and sewing through this treasure. Going to pop on again, like so, and I'm going to do that all the way around, and then meet me at the end and we'll step up. Okay, time to step up, so I'm going to pick up my delica bead, exiting this treasure. I'm going to skip this one, sew through the next one, and then the one on the diagonal to step me up. This is what it looks like. So for this bigger stone, I'm going to add one more round of cylinder beads. So I'm exiting the delica, the pumpkin-y color. I'm just going to pick up the Toho treasure, this cylinder bead, and I'm just going to put one in between each sticking out bead all the way around, and then we'll start. Picking up the last cylinder bead, exiting here. We're just going to sew through this one, and then the one on the diagonal to step up. Have. Now I'm just going to put that needle down for now, and I'm going to just turn it to the other side where I have my stop bead, and take off your stop bead and thread a needle. Taking off my stop bead, threaded my needle, and I'm exiting this interior bead here. I just want to sew through this one just to get my thread to where I can, on the outside, so I can add some more beads on. Let's add some 15-0s. So I'm exiting here, Pick up a 15-0. Just going to sew through the next sticking out cylinder bead. Again, like that. You're just going to keep going around. Say to you have about, let's say 8 or 9 15-0s on, and then we're going to do that little decrease. So just get up to that point and then we'll decrease together. I've gotten a number of 15-0s on. Now I'm going to do that little decrease. So there's my last 15-0 I put on. I'm exiting the cylinder. I'm just going to sew through the next one without any beads on my needle. Just going to pull that in a little bit as we go. Like that. Now I'm just going to finish my round with just adding a 15-0 in between each delica or cylinder bead. So see, you're going to have this little sort of decrease here, and then you're just going to continue on to the end and step up. Now I'm ready to step up. So exiting here, I'm going to sew through this one, the cylinder, and then the 15-0 on the diagonal. And now I stepped up. And this is what I have so far. Next up, let's add another round of 15-0s. So exiting the 15-0, just going to put on another round. And I'm just going to put one 15-0 in between each sticking out 15-0. And when you get to the top where you did your little decrease, just put a bead in between. You're not skipping anything, so just put one bead through each 15-0 until you get to the end, and then we'll continue. Let's step up. So here's my last 15-0. Exiting this 15-0, I'm just going to sew through this 15-0 and the one on the diagonal, like that. And this is what we have so far. That is what we have so far. So I'm going to turn it over again. So this is going to be the front, and we're going to work a little bit on the back. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is just move our thread over to the outside. We're exiting here. It's going to sew through this bead. So now I can add some more beads on the outer edge. I'm going to take my stone and I'm going to put it face down to where the point is, and you should be able to determine the point. It's not as pointy as the smaller stone because we have another round of delicas or the cylinder beads on. But when you look at the point here, you see the 3 beads here. You just make sure your point is sitting right there. So put my stone in position, and don't worry about it if you're a little bit off. You should be able to get your point just about there, and just hold it with your thumb and couple of the fingers, and then you're exiting a delica. You're just going to put a round of 15-0s on, and you're not going to skip anything. You're just going to put a round of 15-0s all the way around, and then you're going to step up and do a second round. So I'll let you do both those rounds and then meet me back here and we'll continue. Okay. So I've done both rounds, and this is what it looks like. It came out great, so pretty. So you can turn over to the other side, the front, and you can just sew this thread in, and then we'll add our 11-0s on the back. Just a note here, so I often say when you're sewing a thread in to sew through your delicas and then reverse direction. Sorry about the noise. So here I'll just show you what I mean by that. So I'm exiting a delica or cylinder this way. I'm just going to, and I've sewn it in enough, I'm going to go that through the next one and then back through that original one, and that locks it into place. So here we go. So it looks like so far. Okay, so I've gone ahead a little bit, sorry about that, but you're on the back, and you're going to do the same thing you did with the smaller stone. You're just going to move your thread. You'll be coming in, let's say one of these 15-0s. You're going to go to the second one in, and then you're just going to put an 11-0 in between each one of the 15-0s until you're done, and then you can sew that in. And then as I've laid out my bezels and my Paisley duos, the way I think it would be really pretty. Now, it never comes out the same way that you lay it down, so you can lay yours down as well, or you can take a screenshot of this and have this as a guide for you to follow as I do the tutorial. They won't come out exactly like this because I have to find places on the bezels to attach these Paisley duos, and it might not be exactly where I've laid them out, so it's going to shift a little bit, but that's okay. It's kind of fun, you know. It's just kind of fun to see how it comes out. So one thing that's really important here is you have to make sure that the Paisley duos are all in line. You can tilt these guys any way you like, and find beads to go through, but you want to make sure that your Paisley duos are going to be in line because you're making a bracelet and it has to be, you know, has to be in line. So in other words, if I put these up here, my bracelet's going to go off, right? So you want it as even as possible with the Paisley duos, and you can just sort of play with your bezels if you don't love this configuration. All right, so we're going to get started with the center stone. So take your screenshot or play with your beads and then come back and we'll get started with attaching the Paisley duos to the center stone. Okay, here's my center stone. This is the 18 millimeter, and I'm going to hold it like this. So the way I'm going to attach my first two Paisley duos is I'm going to just look at the center here. So here's a center delica here. Fix that guy. And then I'm actually going to attach through this line of delicas right here, or cylinder beads. So right here. So if I see that, if I look at this one, this is sort of at the top. It's next to this other one. So right here, I'm going to count down 3. 1, 2, 3. And this is where my thread is coming out. See my thread popping out there? So that's where I'm going to start connecting. Now, if your bezel is different than mine, if you use different beads, you may be 4 down or 2. But if you've done what I've done here, you're going to come down the 3rd bead in this line. Okay, so I'm going to put on a Paisley duo now. So I've come down to that 3rd bead, 1, 2, 3, and now I've put a Paisley duo on in this direction. So the top part here, I've come through here, out the other side, and down through the bottom. Then I'm going to pick up another one like this. And here, let me just get it on the mat so you can see what it looks like. So then I picked up another one and come through the point, and out this side. Now I'm going to connect these beads to the bezel. So I'm coming out of here. I'm going to count 1, 2, and I'm going to go through bead number 3. I kind of put them, the way I figured that is I put them down and then gave it, just sort of pushed it a little bit down, situated them, and it looked like that bead was going to be the perfect bead to connect. So if you're, experimenting, then, you'll just see where it connects the best. So here, this is what it looks like. So here, I'll give you a look on the inside just so you can see. So that's a good connection when I pull it. If it isn't, just take it out. And then, so I'm exiting here. I want to connect this side, so I'm going to go through this one. And then this one. So I'm still staying in that line of delicas, just like that. And then I'm going to go through the Paisley duo. So that's going to be our first connection. Okay, next up we're going to connect to the next bezel on. So I'm using the Amethyst bezel, and I'm looking at my picture, and I have it tilted a little bit. So let's see if we can get to that tilt. You just want to make sure when you attach it that you're going to be able to attach to both beads here. So I'm going to use the center line of delicas here. So here I have these two that are next to each other, and so we're only going to use these gold ones in the center, in that center line. So I'm just going to tilt it a little bit. I'm going to hold it against my bead here. I'm not going to do a super tilt on it, just about like that. So I think that I'm going to just find one of those center delicas. So I'm going to start here. I can't give you a count because I don't know where to count from. So I'm just going to come up through this one. Just, you know, sort of eyeball it and then put it on. And I think that's going to be a nice connection right there. So just come through that bead. So I've just turned it around so I can sew a little easier. So I came through this gold bead here. So I want to connect to this next, the whole bottom hole here. So I'm just going to, exiting here, I'm going to sew on the diagonal through these beads until I get to this one. So if I want to count from the one I'm coming out of here, I'm coming out of this one, skip one, and sew through the next one. But you have to do it on the diagonal so that no thread is showing. Going on the diagonal now. Exiting here, I'm going to sew through this one. I'm going to sew through this one, and I'm leaving it loose for you. This one. Through this one. So I just want to get down to that bead that I showed you before, and this one. So I think that's going to be my connection. So let me just pull through, and when I pull it, that kind of corresponds with this bead here. And as you pull it together, it'll, you know, it'll sit nicely. So I'm just going to sew, see how that goes. I'm going to sew through this one. Like that. And then the top hole here. And let's see how that looks. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Okay, let's do a little embellishing. So we're connected here, we're coming out of the top. I'm going to pick up 3 of my Toho 11-0, the galvanized old gold, and I've culled them a bit. I do this all the time just to make sure I get sort of similar size beads, because some of them are thinner, some of them are a little bit thicker, so I just do a little culling there. And here, so I have these 3. Sitting here, I'm just going to sew through that delica or cylinder bead that I was coming out of from the where I attached here, and then the one on the diagonal because my needle just went that way and I'm going that way anyway. So like that. And then I want to work my way down to this bead that's connecting here. So I'm exiting this cylinder bead, and you just want to, so if you want to count, so we went through this one, skip this one and come through this one, but you need to do it on the diagonal. So you're exiting here, so through this one, or you can even go through this one, until you get to this one. Okay, I'm exiting that gold delica there. I'm going to pick up 5 of the Tohos, 11-0s, exiting here. I'm just going to sew through the bead that the thread is coming out of from this Paisley duo, so this one, and you'll probably end up going on the one on the diagonal, which is fine because we're headed in that direction anyway. So you want to place those on like so, and you know, depending on which bead you use, like what if you used a Miyuki here, you might need another one because they're much smaller. So this is what I've put on so far. My way up to this bead here. So this is the bead where my thread was coming out of here. So you just, so I come through this one on the, and then I went on the diagonal. You're gonna, I'm not gonna sew it, but just go through this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and then come out this one. So you're sewing on the diagonal, so you're gonna end up coming out of that bead right there. Let's get that done and come back and we'll. Okay, so I've worked my way around till I was exiting this bead right here. I'm going to pick up 4 of my galvanized gold 11-0s, and I'm going to sew through these 3 like that to connect, make that connection. This is what it looks like. Now you're just going to sew this thread in, so just work your way around and just, you know, sew your threads in. You can go this way, whichever way works for you. You can even actually go through, you can even go through this one if you like and go through, you know, or use these as your sew in area. See whatever works for you, but just sew that thread in, you know, give a little pull so it's nice and snug. And there you go. Okay, this is what we have so far. So I want to add the Paisley duos on the other side. Now, if you're a lefty, you're probably going to be really happy right now doing this way, but I have to sew in this direction. So I've just turned my piece around and just situate those. Okay, so I'm doing the exact same thing on this side that I did on this side. I'm going to find my bottom point here. I'm going to count up 3 of these cylinder beads. 1, 2, 3, the same round that's on the other side. And I'm going to sew through that one. I'm going to add my Paisley duo, like so. Then I'm going to add, come through the top, go through the bottom hole, come through the top hole. Now I'm going to add the other Paisley duo, make sure, just like that. So it's going to sit like this, right? And then I want to find the bead up here to connect the Paisley duos to. So I think I did 3. So here I'm exiting here. 1, 2, 3. You can check back to make sure that I did 3. I believe I did. There we go. So that's how we're going to get that side on. Okay, so I've connected these 2 on. Now I want to come up to this bead so I can connect here. So I'm exiting this one. I'm just going to sew on the diagonal through this one. And then this one. Like that. And then you want to sew through the top hole of your Paisley duo. And now I have these connected. Let's add on the Amethyst bezel. So I'm still working in this direction. So I've changed direction. You know, this one is going that way, and I've had this point up. I'm going to just find one of the beads to connect to where your bezel is sitting nicely. If you're able to work along with me, if I'm going to connect through these gold beads in the center there. So these guys, and I'm just going to start from the top here. I'm coming down 1, 2, 3. I'm going to come down number 4. So that's number 4 gold bead in the middle, and it's going to add it on like so. That's what it looks like so far. We've come down number 4 bead, so I'm going to sort of put it on like so, and then I want to sew down a number of beads so I can connect to the top hole of this Paisley duo. So I'm exiting here. I want to come through this bead here. So here's where I'm exiting. Skip one, go through this one, but you have to do it on the diagonal. So exiting here, so through this one, this one, this one, and then come out of this one. Okay, I'm exiting this gold bead right here. And the reason that I'm not going through each bead with you all the time is, I think we did it previously, you know, so I showed you how to, you can sew on the diagonal. And also, it's so much easier on my neck not to do it and twist around, you know, because I'm always like in weird positions when I'm trying to film. All right, so exiting here. I'm going to sew through this one. Let's just go through there first. Let's see how we're looking. Okay, that looks good. So that's what it looks like. Now my needle wants to go in this direction, so I'm not going to argue with it. So I'm going to go through this one, the bottom hole of that one. And that put it on very nicely. Okay, now I'm exiting here. I'm going to work my way down again, and so I come out of the a bead, like this bead right here actually. So I'm going to sew through this one. I'll go a little bit of the way with you on this one. This one. So I'm just sewing on the diagonal until I get to the bead I want to sew through. This one. And this one. And one more. So I'm going here now through this one. So that's where I'll be exiting. I'm going to pick up 7 of my Toho 11-Os, and I'm going to sew through this gold bead right here, and I think that's where we have connected in one spot, and then the one on the diagonal. So just to embellish around here. And notice the embellishment is different than the previous one. And that's just because nothing is repeated on this, because, you know, everything, we're putting them on all differently. So it's not like you have one component and you're connecting on, you know, to each component in the same exact place. We're kind of, you know, we're playing around with this to make it look, you know, a little more interesting. Okay, so I've come through this bead and then the one on the diagonal, sew through. I'm just going to talk you through this one, this one, this one, and then I want you to come out of this gold one right here. Okay, I'm exiting that gold bead. I'm going to pick up 5 of my Toho 11-Os and I'm just going to sew down through this one right here. So that's the original one, you know, one of the ones we were coming out of. So this pumpkin-y color, and then the gold one on the diagonal. And I'm going to pull that into place. And now you have another bezel attached. So how cool is that? All right, so you're just going to sew this thread in and then come back and we'll... So I've gone ahead a little bit, but this is what we have so far. Now I'm going to let you do these on your own and just, you know, just refer back. I think it's a pretty good guide. I think you kind of got it now on how to connect and, you know, choosing places to connect. I just wanted to show you real quick the picture. So this is what I took when I just did my, you know, I just laid it all out. And here's my actual piece. So, you know, they're slightly different, but not bad. This one is not as slanted as that one, but I still think it's going to be really pretty. Just remember that when you put your last group on, that you want to make sure the Paisley duos are the ones that are in line, and these can go up, down, sideways. It doesn't really matter. All right, so get this done and then come back. So get these 2 ends on, come back, and then we'll do the bracelet. Okay, so we're going to add one side of the bracelet on. So it's going to be sort of a funky beginning, but get it. So you want, if your bezel, last bezel is straight up like mine, I've come down like the third from the top, 1, 2, 3, come out that bead, and you're using these center beads here. Move everybody over. So these guys, I'm exiting this one right here. I've put on a Paisley duo. Notice the way it's on. A pearl, another Paisley duo in that direction. Come around through the bottom hole of that one, the top hole of another one, the bottom hole of this one, and then out a corresponding bead that will work with the bottom hole of this one, which is 2 down from the one we're coming out of. So here we're coming out of this one, so here and here. So you want to exit right here, like that. So when I pull it, that's what it looks like so far. I want to connect this one on. So I'm exiting the gold one right here. Let me see if I can clear up a little bit. There we go. I'm going to sew through this one. Come on, needle. There we go. This one. And then the gold one. So I'm going to stay in line there where I attach. And then I'm going to go through this one. And if your, you know, beads are on and different, then you'll just, you know, you'll just go along and you know, choose which bead to go through. So what I have so far, picking up a pearl and a Paisley duo, sewing through the bottom hole, come through the top. The bottom hole of this Paisley duo, and then the top hole. I'll move my thumb in a second. There we go. So we have so far a Paisley duo, through there, to the top of it, go through the bottom. This one, top of this one, and then the bottom. This one, like that. I picked up another Paisley duo, come through the bottom, go through the top, the bottom of this one, and then the top, like that. So this is what I have so far. Next up, pearl Paisley duo, so the top, then the bottom hole, the top of this one, and the bottom, that. And then maybe we'll just move on to a pearl. And let me find Paisley duo, like that. Just put it down on the mat, like so. So coming through the pearl, the bottom hole of this guy, then the top hole, bottom hole of this one, and then this one. And let's see, do we have another one to put on? Now it's going to depend. I'm going to put one more on to complete my bracelet. So going through this one, like that. Bottom hole, top hole of this one, and then the bottom hole of this one. And this is all I need for about a 7.5-inch bracelet. So if you need longer, you just add them on. Even if they get kind of wonky looking, it doesn't matter as long as as long as they're straight here. But how you put these on, it's supposed to look like leaves that are sort of scattered around a little bit, or as scattered as you can get with beads. Okay, so just get to this point, and if you need to add more on, add more on. If you need to do less, do less. The clasp is relatively simple, so it's just going to be some beads in the toggles, so you can play with the end also. And on the clasp, so I did a separate thread. I put on a couple feet, and I'm just gonna, I've sewn through, just sewn through, coming out here, so you can sew back through the beads here. I put on a 3mm pearl, the 11/0 Toho, 5 of my Miyuki's 11/0s. I went through the clasp, the ring, 5 more of the Miyuki 11/0s, Toho and the pearl. I'm going to sew through this one, the next one, so like that, and then I'm going to keep going all the way down, and I'm going to come through this one. I'm going to sew through my cylinders again and out one that attaches here, and so mine's a little loose there, so I think it's a good idea, especially if you are you got a little loose somewhere, to go through these, and then you can tighten all this up, and then we're going to come out here. So I'll let you do that, and then we'll continue. So we're exiting here. We're going to keep this like sort of very simple and organic looking. So we're going to sew through the pearl, these guys, the 11/0 Toho and 2 of the Miyuki 11/0s. Okay, and I just want to see if we can twist that around a little bit. So let's see if I do that, and let's say I go up, so I'm coming out of the second one. So if I count 2 and then go up the rest of these all the way around, let's see how that works. I'm having a designing moment right now. And then through these 2 and these again. Let's see if that twisted me around a little bit. And then down these 2 again. That. Give it a little pull. Oh, there you go. So that kind of twisted around a little bit. And so I'm exiting, this bead right here. Gosh, I hope that was okay. And then I'm just going to pop over here and just sew through these guys like that. And then when I pull, we've got a nice little twist. Of course, I have to pull this end too. And we've got our clasp on. So that's what that looks like. And then just tie these threads in and then come back and we'll do the other side. I'll talk you through the other side because we put it on exactly the same way. I just changed a little bit on the clasp and I'll just show you that. So here I've just put my sequence on, and just make sure you're putting it in so it's, the bracelet part is somewhat in line. I mean, you just want it to lay nicely, and you'll find the proper bead. I started from down here and I just did 1, 2. I went into this bead right here, and then I added all my beads. And when I got to this part, with the other end, I added the 3mm pearl, the Toho 11/0, and 5 beads before I went through the ring on the clasp. I want you to add 7 and then go through the ring, add 7, do your twist. I'll put a timestamp in, and then come down and sew this thread in. So it's really the same exact way you did the other side. Again, you're just going to have to determine where you put your bracelet part. So that's the hard part. The rest is easy. I'll put timestamps in so that you know exactly where you're going. So get that done and come back and we'll finish it. Okay, we're back and we're done. And I just love how it came out. I just think it's so pretty. I know it was a very challenging piece, but just take your time. You don't even have to do all the bezels. What if you just did the center one and then just do the bracelet? Or if you did the smaller one and just do the bracelet? You don't have to do all of them. If you're a real beginner, if you know how to do a bezel, you can do this. And so you can really choose, or just stop here. Just stop there. That's what I did that's what I gave you instruction for on the video. So you can just stop here and put your bracelet on. I think that would be beautiful. You don't even need these. You can add more, whatever you like. If you don't want to use the contrasting color delicas, the alternate, you can just use the treasures that are in the collection. I just put it on a blue one because that's all I had. So you can do that as well. Our next video, I believe, is going to be the earrings. I wore this set to one of those candlelight concerts. I don't know if you've ever seen those. It's where they have these string quartets or piano or, but just small group of musicians that play in these beautiful, small venues. A lot of times it's a church, an old church. And they put hundreds of candles on the stage, and they're just in these candles, and the seeing the light, listening to the music was so gorgeous. They're LED candles, they're not real candles. All right, so anyway, you can always Google candlelight concerts, and they're all over the country. They're just wonderful. All right, so I want to thank you so much for joining me. I hope you make this and post it on Facebook, because there are going to be so many different configurations. No two are going to be the same. So this is really going to be like your own design. So very cool. All right, take care. See you soon.